Oh, hey, I'm Maria. You're with Cooks Who Care, listening to Beyond the Table. And I have some really great guests for you today to talk about getting from a beginning point, starting out small, and growing to scale, which is a really complicated topic for a lot of people in the food business. You have one idea at the beginning and it becomes entirely something else. And that road that we're going to talk about is with Birchtree Catering. So I hope you love it. Check it out.
You're not cool with me working 110 hours a week, honey? People are the best investment, continuing to hone these processes down so that they can just kind of go. You know, talking about these pressure points, talking about issues that you're going through does not in any way diminish your successes. You know? Hi, we are Birchtree Catering. My name is Rasa, Stirby, Benefico, and I am one of the co-owners and the executive chef.
And I'm Allegra, Derengowski, and I focus on marketing, development, and sales for Birchtree Catering. We are a very small, female-owned company, and we focus on local sourcing, sustainable events, and seasonal menus. And Rasa actually creates custom menus for every single client if they prefer.
Yeah, that was really one of the cornerstones of our company when we started building it, both the sustainability aspect and being able to customize the experience for our guests. Started with customized menus and then really has evolved into having a customized event, whether it's a corporate event or a big wedding.
So why don't we kind of go back to the beginning, if you can remember that far.
So we started it about 9 years ago, and I started the company. I started it kind of with the idea that it would be a cafe or something, and then we realized that to start a cafe we should start catering. Allegra joined us and really started focusing in as a catering company from there. Yeah.
We incorporated in 2012, and that was the same year that we found our commercial kitchen at Globe Dye Works in Frankfurt, and so that's when we sort of really focused in and decided that the cafe was not really happening and this was just going to be catering full on, and because it was going so well, and you know, finding Globe was a big transition for us. Before then, we were doing everything from our houses, from our little row homes in South Philly, using our basements for storage. We had a Mr. Storage space.
Now, how did you find the building?
I said, well, there's this place, we should give them a call. And one of the owners picked up the phone when I called and said, oh yeah, we gave us a ballpark rent that was super cheap.
Yeah.
So we went and checked it out, and it was great. It was
a completely raw and empty space.
Completely.
I mean, it was a huge cavern of a room that I think still had like some of the old thread that had been from the thread dyeing factory in the corner, and was just insane. And we just saw it and fell in love. I feel like with this big empty space.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Like when I walked around, I was like, oh my gosh. And I like that the older parts are still there.
Oh yeah.
And like it's still building out to be new, but here was the past, like right in front of you.
Yeah.
150 years of stuff.
Yeah. So amazing.
And so there's still in our kitchen. So now that space is our kitchen and our tasting room, and we still have this great brick wall that kind of is from the original room when we first came in. So when you come in for tastings, you see this great wall, and everything else is this beautiful built-out kitchen that Globe Dye Works was really, everyone that works there, they were really very instrumental in helping us build this kitchen that would be very hard to do in any other space.
It is a large kitchen, and it has room to grow. And I think that was a really important step for us, that maybe we didn't even realize what a great idea that was at the time. But we had work, we were doing well with weddings, we barely had any overhead, we barely were paying ourselves, and so we had this good chunk of money that when we moved into Globe, that's where it went. And it went to this build out, and it went to purchasing all this equipment, and at that time we couldn't get a loan.
Yeah.
Our bank was like, love to help you out, but let's do it. We have no credit.
Yeah.
It was our dream come true, And it was sort of like starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden we had a lot of overhead.
Mm-hmm.
We had rent. We had employees that were, I think this is the first time we had full-time employees.
How did the stress feel at that moment?
I don't know.
Compared to now,
compared to now.
At the time, we're like, oh, there's so much to do, and it's so stressful, and we could go back to those days. We have been really focused on our team. We kind of build our team, and then if someone is showing a certain kind of strength, we're like, okay, cool, we're going to develop that and start that part of the company because that's the strength that you have. And
how did you think a little bit further? You'd be like, all right, we're all in. We're already doing this. When did it come into like, okay, how do we standardize this? Because now that you had the idea kind of a little more concrete, maybe you can describe to me like how that kind of came about.
It took some years.
Right? Yeah, it took some time. I think, and a lot of it was, starting to feel stressors, starting to feel what does it feel like when you start having multiple event weekends? When you want to be able to take on more work, and you have built your company where you are doing every part of it, and a lot of the knowledge resides in your head, and it's a very, very specific and very finely tuned knowledge, right? So then the big challenge for all of us, I think, at that stage is how do you start standardizing it? And really, for us, it's when you meet those stressors.
I think it's really a lot of the stress points that we get to is when we need to hire somebody new and maybe not having the funds to do that. So we just keep coming up against this, and our team just keeps growing a little bit every year. We keep sort of adding on a new position, and every time that new position comes on, we all are like, oh, thank gosh.
How did I ever?
Yeah.
There's that personal struggle of wanting to keep everything precious to you, right? Like your experience has gotten you to a very specific point, and you feel like it is precious and perfect, exactly as you've done it.
No one can do it like you.
No one can do it like you.
Right.
And of course,
the
big thing is both then being like, all right, well then now my next job is to be able to train people, to be able to be a good enough leader to pass this knowledge on, and that's really exciting for small businesses, and it's really hard.
Totally different mindset. It's like you go from doing to teaching. The sourcing aspect of what we do, the sustainability of it, and the availability of our menus. Not anything is ever the same. I feel like it's a constant change, and so that's, I think, part of what our chefs love about it is that they can adapt and they can cook, and it's not just everything is regimented and they're doing the same thing every day. They really get to put themselves into the menus.
Instead we have flavor profiles, and we have kind of goals for dishes rather than having, which is very challenging. So we can't use these preset recipe formulas, for example, that kind of last for your season. Things are changing all the time. Nothing is ever really going to be exactly the same. So it empowers the chefs. Makes training a little bit more difficult, but a lot more fun. So that's exactly right. I mean, we have some great dishes that are the same name of the dish throughout the season, but as I always tell our clients, these things will change a little bit because seasonal mushrooms are going to change, seasonal herbs are going to change. We make our house-made ricotta, so the quality of that cheese will change because of the milk that is changing and because of the seasonality of it. Now we're all about managing growth and making sure that we're growing in the right directions, that we're utilizing our resources as well as we can in a way that keeps pushing us forward. We think we're very much on the cusp of a lot of really exciting projects, a lot of really exciting areas of growth, and so everything that we're doing is really this whole conversation, right? Is like continuing to hone these processes down so that they can just kind of go.
What was a growing pain? What was something that didn't work out as you planned? What was something that looking back at it was like, really not a good idea?
We've always focused on customization and local sourcing, and so we wanted to get to the point really, we're at that stage where we're becoming a well-known catering company. We won Best of Philly for party food in 2015. We're getting there, but we're still very small compared to these bigger catering companies that have exclusive venues and they're the spots that are really hard. So we're always trying to kind of dart in. So we wanted to, again, still be really flexible and have a lower price point for some clients. So we introduced something that we called a more basic wedding package. The idea was that, you know, you would have a little bit less of a choice, you wouldn't have the customization, you would have really kind of straightforward rentals and everything, and so the idea was that it would save us overhead, and it would still be really great quality, but a really easy choice. We continued really doing all of the planning and all of the energy that we were doing for all of our other weddings, but kind of just undercharging, undercharging. And that was a really valuable lesson. And the weddings were, you know, they went really well, everything was wonderful, but then internally we're like, well, instead, let's focus on our costs and you know, being and growing our social catering company and our corporate catering and all of that instead, and get the flexibility that I think that we wanted with this, but really knowing your product and not trying to recreate what you see in your competitors that was huge for us, and that was, you know, the biggest lesson I think for us is just like, okay, this know who you are as a company and own it.
We feel really much like we're at the cusp of another big growth spurt, and so we're trying to be very, very careful with our decision making, because if we get tied into one thing or another, that could hinder our growth, and we've been so careful not to get ourselves tied into anything.
It's like building that big kitchen, right? Like we're at the place where we're making sure that we're building a big enough kitchen that we can have another 5 years of just being able to make those bold decisions, you know.
And so at this stage, is it a higher risk, you know, for your business? So, I mean, that's a big decision, and I feel that plays into it a lot. You know, is that investment worth it? Like you're saying, you're thinking not just like this year, you're like, well, 5 years from now, is that still going to be a great decision?
And are we pushing our employees too hard? And are we going to make sure that we have their paychecks every 2 weeks?
Right.
You know, these are decisions that we did not really have to make 5 years ago. But we have to take all that into consideration now.
And what are some other questions? Because like you guys started that way. Like, what are some other questions that are kind of popping in your mind with, you know, opportunities on the table?
Our time, I think, is most precious at this point. And you know, I have a daughter and a husband, and she has a husband. You know, there's all kinds of considerations for them that we now have that we didn't 5 years ago.
So like, you're not cool with me working 110 hours a week, honey? Like, I feel like you can prepare for the worst, you can hope for this best, and you do have to make sure you have the resources to have that best case scenario, but I think when you're thinking about risk and reward, having to be like, are you actually solid with the middle ground? Like, is that really what you want? You know, because that's a possibility, and that's you know, that's hard. Really take the time to get to know yourself as a leader and as a member of a team. I think that it's very tempting to want to be everything for your team, and this is, you know, both personally something that I've definitely felt, but that I've seen with a lot of people as well. It's really tempting to just want to be able to plug any hole that you see coming up, you know, that you want to be there for every member of your team, but it's so important as you're growing as a company to really get to know what your strengths are, what your needs are, and to be confident in those and be able to kind of know how to communicate them to your partner, to your team, and to really own them, you know, for yourself. I think that's you know, starting within who you are as a leader and as a member of a team is going to be just the most important part to being able to drive that growth and drive those changes.
I spent a lot of years being very lonely in this business ownership, even though I had a partner and even though I had a husband, and I just felt very closed off. I didn't want people to know my struggles. I didn't want to talk about our financial issues, and I wanted the outside world to be very, you know, rosy and Birchtree is amazing, you know, and that's all we ever want them to know. And so through 2016, you know, I think we really started communicating with each other, and I went through a few business programs. I met a ton of other entrepreneurs that were going through the same things that I was. And just being able to talk about it, and then us being able to talk about it was such a big deal.
And Birchtree is still great.
We are
able to talk about, but that's the thing, like having that mentality to be like, talking about these pressure points, talking about issues that you're going through, does not in any way diminish your successes, you know? But I think that exactly as you're saying, when you're a small business owner, you want to keep all of that kind of so close and so tight.
Because you've got that mentality, like you've got this, you know, and you can do this. And every day you wake up and say, I can do it. And you can, but it's just so much easier
when you're part of a community and you talk about it.